like we can get going. We have a quorum for the CCGC, the Community Connectivity Grant Committee. This is our April 7th meeting, which I noticed I put the wrong date on the agenda because I typed it on the 5th. I wrote April 5th, but it's Tuesday, April 7th. Apologize for that. We have on the call South Mary Jo Nozel, Jim Lopos, Frank Pappalardo. We have Eric Olson. We have Michelle Noren for at least some time to make sure we're all okay from the select. Kurt Procherena, and Bonnie Ream-Snyder is not to join us. Is there anybody on the call I missed? Okay. One thing I would suggest going forward is that just announce yourself, since some of us are on the phone and some of us are video. Just announce yourself when you're about to speak, and that will help the minute taker, who is myself. Before we get going, is there anybody that wants to say anything in general about this process? I guess I'll put that under the welcome thing. Did it go relatively well for everybody?
No problems with Eric.
Okay.
Yep, no problems here so far. Jim.
And I'm online here. Yeah.
Okay. And I know Kurt's a pro, so great. Thank you. So we haven't met since February because of the coronavirus. We canceled our March. So Kurt has got a lot to update us. BSC went offline from the office and everybody went work from home. So he now has a lot of information and needs our help moving forward. So before we move into Kurt's presentation and update, can I get an approval of the February 24, 2020 minutes?
Mary, this is Eric. The only thing that I saw on there is that I was not at the meeting, and then it was said that I voted to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. So I just to make that change. Other than that, I didn't have any issues.
Oh yeah, but it was supposed to be Bonnie. Thank you. I'll make that correction.
Okay.
Bonnie, approval, because we have you at the start being excused.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Okay, thank you. You got to keep that minute taker organized. Thank you, Eric. Anything else? I have a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion. It's Jim.
Hi, Jim. Thank you.
I'll second it. This is Frank.
Thank you, Frank. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstain?
I'm going to abstain since I wasn't at the meeting.
Thank you. And anybody saying no? All right. Thank you, everybody. The ayes carry. And Kurt and I spoke, this is Mary Jo, Kurt and I spoke at the beginning of this week, which I guess was the end of last week. Sorry, it's kind of blurry here. About the project and where we stand, and became apparent that BSC is ready to help us develop the preliminary plans and needs to do some measurements on site, and has the start of a schedule, a draft schedule, which he emailed all of us today. And we need to help BSC move forward on these issues on the particular properties. And we also need to discuss how we're going to do the preliminary plan review with the committee virtually, probably, and also then plan for a community information session to get the Soundview area informed at preliminary plan and what we're moving forward with this wonderful project. And then finally, I did call the state yesterday and left a message for our contact there regarding the timelines for the construction grant, given everything that's gone on. So I'm not sure if they are working from home. I would assume they are, and I haven't received a call back. But that's a pending discussion that I'll let the committee know. So with that lengthy discussion, Kurt, would you like to take over the call?
Certainly. Good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Just wanted to
Are
confirm.
we supposed to be seeing you also, Kurt?
No, I'm having an issue with my camera.
Okay.
I had an external camera and I gave that to someone else, and now my webcam on my laptop is not working. I think there's a setting that's not done correctly. I probably screwed it up. Hopefully get it fixed. I'll have it fixed for the next meeting. I got our IT guys on it. So apologies for that. So I'll walk through the items that Mary Jo has on the agenda, project status. I'm going to jump over Transportation Center and go to fieldwork, preliminary design, and then we could talk about the community input meeting, the date. Mary Jo, you'll notice I didn't put a date on the schedule for that. I figured something we could talk about in light of what's been going on. So project status, survey work has been completed on Hartford Avenue and Shore Road, Route 156. We did do the drone flights on both. Shore Road was essentially to develop the base plan that will be used for layout of the sidewalk, and that will support all the DOT approvals. The survey on Hartford Avenue was done to supplement previous survey work. If you recall, we had discussed the fact that in some areas of the project, closer to Bocce Lane, where there's some pretty significant topographical changes, we need to get into a very high level of detail to make sure that our work interfaces with the existing properties in kind of a seamless manner. And very important that our new work doesn't have a negative impact on somebody else's property where the elevation differences from our work interface with someone else's yard. As an example, some folks have walkways, concrete landings, steps that lead up to the front door of the house and the like, that because we are pushing the sidewalk from the elevation essentially of the top of the curb, pushing that sidewalk back 6 plus or minus feet, we then remove in some of those areas the ability to have the slopes that are there now from the edge of the road down into the yards. So the drone flight and some supplemental survey work was done to get a much higher level of detail, particularly what's going to be at the back of sidewalk. The previous survey work that was completed generally stopped at the property line or the street line because that was the focus of the project. So all that work has been completed. The plans have been developed. There's a few minor little things that will continue to be implemented as we move along design. Pretty typical. There's a tremendous amount of data, and there's always a judgment call as to how much data actually gets included in the base plan. Sometimes you can actually have too much data. So we'll continue to refine those as required. We have now jumped into preliminary design. As Mary Jo mentioned, we do need to conduct our site visit. I guess this is jumping ahead to BSC field work. We're planning on being out there next week. I'm currently developing a list of properties on Hartford Avenue. I will have that sent out today with a description of what we need to do as far as looking at each of the properties. And again, the properties that we really need to take a look at, to take detailed measurements, additional photographs, are the ones that are closer to Bocce Lane. As we move north towards Shore Road, the topography is much flatter. It's a much simpler issue of dealing with the interface between the new work and the people's front yards. For the most part up there, it'll just be some minor regrading with topsoil, loam and seed to essentially blend in where the back of the sidewalk meets their front yard, for lack of a better term. So I'll have that list sent out today. As Mary Jo and I had discussed, we do need to get on to people's properties. We obviously don't want to do that without people being notified and without people giving their approval. At this point, we don't need to speak with anybody or whatnot. We just need to take measurements. We're going to have some measuring tools out there with us to really begin to understand at a very high level of detail what design requirements are going to be required to make the transition from our sidewalk down into the front yards. And what that'll allow us to do as part of the preliminary design, which we'll present at the May 4th meeting, is to begin to present our thoughts on how we make that happen. As an example, is there a slope? Is there a very small retaining wall? Is there a planting bed that is sloped that helps us make that transition? One of the complicating factors is that there are many different ways we can make that grade transition. Ultimately, somehow that will have to be presented to the property owners. And I'll defer to the committee on how we want to approach that, meaning would we rather develop ideas and present it to get their feedback, or reach out to people and say, we need to make up a difference of, let's say, as an example, 2 feet. Is there anything you'd like to see? I'm a little bit concerned with that approach because then people may throw out all kinds of things that cost a lot of money, but that's something to think about. Some folks have different tastes. We're envisioning that these transitions will be part or will become part of the landscaping, really, of the front yards of these people. So we want to make it look aesthetically pleasing. We want to make it look like it was always there. We want to make it look like it's something that was done, for lack of a better term, on purpose, and not just oh, I could see where they just had to make a transition, so they piled up some rocks and that's how they did it. We want to make sure that it looks nice because we want people to support the project and feel good about it. So that's really the purpose of our site visit. Again, I'll have the list of those properties sent out today. Directly related to that, and this is something that'll come a little bit later, but because we are going to be working on those people's property, we will need some temporary access rights, just like we had for the previous project. I will draft those up. Mary Jo was kind enough to give me some of the final copies of the ones that we did for the previous project, so I'll just use those as a template. And if everybody recalls, those were essentially comprised of the document itself that kind of had a bit of the legal type language on it, and then a description of what the work was, and then there was a little figure that went along with it so people could very clearly see what was being done on their properties. The figures will come during final design, and that's why I say it's a little bit, we're going to get those done just to try to accelerate the schedule, but we won't know exactly what we're doing probably until the final design, because through the preliminary design is when we're going to get feedback from the committee and from the property owners to kind of lock in what the approach is going to be at each property. And again, I want to stress, it's only a select few properties closer to Bocce Lane. As we get up toward Shore Road, it becomes a non-issue. Much simpler because of the topography. We have started preliminary design, as I mentioned. Reason it's so critical for us to get that going is that when we're out there next week, we actually have a design plan in front of us. Jesse Harris from my office is working on that today, actually, because we want to be able to know where the sidewalk is. So as we go out there and physically take measurements from the edge of the curb and those kinds of things, we want to make sure that as we're standing in someone's front yard, we literally know where the back of the sidewalk is going to be and those kinds of things. And we'll actually have little flags that we bring out and put in the ground. We won't leave that stuff there, but that'll help us with understanding where these things will be. And we'll take photographs of all that. So we'll be able to provide that to the committee after our visit, but we won't leave anything behind. When we leave, people won't know that we were ever there. If it's difficult to get a hold of some people or to hear back from some people, as I know sometimes it is, we will just hold off on making the visit. Again, we don't want to go on people's properties without their permission and cause issues. I know that there's some people that are already very concerned about the work that's being done. So we want to be very sensitive to the fact that this is private property, and we want people to know that we're here to support the project, but not stepping on anybody's toes, if you will. I have reached out to DOT District 2. This relates to Shore Road, Route 156, just to confirm what their work status is. Are they physically, they're down in Norwich? Are they in the office? Are they working remotely? Are they able to meet with us? Whereas Hartford Avenue, we, meaning BSC, the committee, homeowners, what have you, really have total control over what happens there. Shore Road is a little bit of a different scenario because it's DOT's road. So as we've talked about in the past, once we get the preliminary alignment done, now that the survey is completed, we need to meet with DOT, and we could do that on the phone. And this is what I want to ask them: how can we physically make it happen? We need to get their feedback on what their thoughts for the sidewalk on Shore Road are. As an example, does DOT want to maintain the current curb line, and then we simply offset the sidewalk relative to the curb line? Does DOT want to use this as an opportunity to move some of the curbing, which would therefore affect the width of the shoulder of the road? Do they want us to place the sidewalk relative to where the shoulder line is, the white line? We don't know. So we want to make sure that before we really get into the design of this thing, we get their feedback. Ultimately, they have to approve the plans as part of the encroachment permit process, and then the contractor that builds the project will go down to District 2 and get the actual permit, but it will be pre-approved by BSC through District 2. So very important for us to interface with them. Additional things like crosswalk locations, etc., to make sure that we're clear on what they want. So that all happens with District 2. Craig Babowitz, who's up in Newington, he's with their planning group, will also have some input, but for the most part, things like this are handled at the district level. I've had several conversations already with them, so they're aware of the project, they're aware of what's going on. So I'm just waiting to hear back from them on how we can start that interaction with them to move the Shore Road piece along also. So I mentioned May 4th, our plan is to have some materials to present to the committee, start getting feedback. If we can't get in front of DOT, we may, on that May 4th meeting, focus on Hartford Avenue and wait until DOT can get with us. But I think one of the key things here is we recognize on our end, we need to be flexible, see what DOT's work practices are and just adapt as needed. The schedule, I sent to Mary Jo, we rejigged it. We're still targeting being able to begin construction on September 8th, the day after Labor Day. So we've kind of compressed some of the things, and I had a long meeting with the project team yesterday, and we're absolutely able to meet those dates. My biggest worry is DOT. Definitely not worried about this committee because we can have meetings like this, heck, 3 times a week if we needed to, and we'll be able to send PDFs and other things. I'm not worried about our ability to move the design forward. I am a little bit worried about DOT and their review process. So having that initial meeting with them is going to be critical to really understand schedule wise, and are they going to be easy to interface with in a frequent manner. So right now, just in looking at the draft schedule, we have preliminary design ending mid-May, the week ending May 15th, then transitioning into final design. We have final design ending in June, Friday, June 19th. And then we have a little bit of overlap for the construction documents, which is very typical because I'll start working on the bidding and the contracting materials while we're still finishing up the final design. But essentially, we have the bid packages ready to go week ending July 3rd. That's a holiday weekend, but that's okay. So we can essentially get this thing out to bid or issue the noticed request for bids the week ending July 10th. That then gives us about 9 weeks. Let me just double check. Yeah, 9 weeks for receiving the bids. BSC does a review of the bids and then signing up a contractor. So we can essentially hit that. September 8th. I'm sorry, I said the 7th before. I apologize. September 8th start date right after Labor Day. That gives us a pretty long construction period. I have it. The bulk of the construction really, depending on how the weather is this year, we did great, but you never know. I always say, as of December 1st, every day is a gift. So we have this going through December, but I'm assuming into December, we'll be kind of in our closeout phase where we're starting to do some of the administrative things. We'll have already done several visits, punch list type visits to look at the finished work and those kind of things. So that's the schedule. We're very confident we can hit those dates. It is pretty compressed, but by nature of the project, we can certainly do it. Again, DOT is the only wild card until I can speak with them. I guess sometimes typical depending on their workload and their availability and those kinds of things. So that's an overview of the schedule. I'm trying to think. That was it from my end. Again, the community input meeting to pick a date for that. And it doesn't have to be today on this call. We'll be extremely flexible at that meeting as far as the schedule for that meeting. We'll have a slideshow, kind of similar to what we did in the past, introductions, overview of the connectivity grant program, some of the bullets of the purpose, and we'll work with the committee like we did in the past to make sure that we're all on the same page. It'll be a PowerPoint presentation. And of course, we'll have the plans. If it's a live meeting, let's hope it's a live meeting at that point. We'll have some poster boards with the designs on easels. in addition to visuals and slides. If it's done in a manner like this, we will create a packet that can be sent out. Again, that will work with the committee to get that fine tuned, but it would essentially be a meeting packet that has all the pertinent information in it that we could work with you to get it uploaded to the town website or something like that. And then we would do that meeting in this kind of format. And I guess under that scenario, because everybody would have the packet, we would walk through it, but then really it would be an opportunity for people to just ask us questions over the system like this. As we had talked about, because the project has a little less moving parts than previous, this meeting is more of a informational meeting in that we're disseminating what's being done versus calling out for ideas and significant design input. We want to be very careful there because we have to protect the budget. We want to get the project built, but very quickly, as we all know, if people start throwing in wish list types items, it could cause us a problem as far as our ability to get everything done within the budget that you've got under the grant. So the meeting will be more of an informational, a presentation outlay, as opposed to a call for design ideas as we did on the previous project, because it was a little bit of a different scope. I think that's my list. Did I miss anything?
Kurt, this is Frank. Kurt?
Hi.
Hi, this is Frank. How you doing?
How you doing?
Good. Quick question here, or actually, we have Connecticut Water installing water mains on Portland and Swan Avenue, but a portion of that work is going to be on Hartford Avenue in hooking up laterals, and a good portion of it's going to be on Route 156 and the extensions. Now, they were supposed to be done by May 30th or May 25th with all that mainline work and the laterals on Hartford Avenue. They've suspended all of their non-essential construction activities. Our agreement with Connecticut Water was that they're not going to do any work over the summer months, because obviously we can't have roads dug up during the summer months, which means that they might reactivate their construction activities beginning of September.
Yep.
So I think that we just have to be aware of that in terms of our construction schedules and coordinate with the Connecticut Water Construction Company to make sure that we're not crossing paths.
Yes, absolutely. Great point. And unfortunately, that's one of those things that, because of the situation we're in, the best case scenario is that somehow they get out there and they get their stuff done. The worst case scenario is that they want to start after Labor Day or something like that. In which case, my recommendation would be to delay the construction. Clearly, we would not want to have the two contractors tripping over each other. I think that could be a disaster, particularly because
construction company is Mizzy Construction, and I've talked with the president of Mizzy and also their project manager. They seem to be fairly easy to work with. So, I mean, we may be able to work both things concurrently, but we're just going to have to see how that plays out in the next few weeks. So I'm just throwing it in the back of everybody's mind here. I mean, obviously, I as much as anybody would like to make sure that we start our construction activities September, so we're done. But we may have to make some modifications in that approach. Now, the good part of that is that in discussion with Mizzy Construction and Connecticut Water, they were looking for a laydown yard, and talked to Tim, and they're using the parking lot or the field across the street from the church for their laydown yard. And in return for that, they're going to cut in whatever kind of road we want for our bus.
That's great.
So
Very good.
we can, discuss that over, over our design areas. And Tim, I think, has already discussed the possibility of a shelter with a bus shelter with the bus district. So
Okay.
maybe
Well,
able to implement that with virtually no cost to the project.
Yeah, that's great. So we'll keep an eye on the Connecticut Water schedule, and we'll proceed as if, and actually, I guess I'll look to the committee for guidance on this, but my thought is, or my proposal is, that we proceed as if we are starting September 8th, in case we get lucky, and we can. That way we have everything ready to go, and if things do work out, we can get it out to bid and get on board. If we find out that Connecticut Water is going to start, let's say September 8th, it doesn't mean we can't get the project out to bid. We maybe just modify some of the dates or something, potentially end up with a situation where maybe some of the work happens in the spring of 2021. But for now, let's assume, since it's the only information we have to go on, let's assume we're going to get it out to bid and that we're going to be able to start on the 8th. If something changes, we'll adapt accordingly. Does that make sense?
I certainly think that's
Yes.
an appropriate approach.
Sounds good to me.
Same here.
Ditto.
Okay, great. We will proceed accordingly then. Okay. Any other questions?
I have a couple. Kurt, I have a couple quick questions. It's Jim. Number one, on Hartford Avenue, to what degree do you really need to step on the property to get a preliminary design? I mean, given, let's say you can't get on the property, given the drone data, given the survey, given the ability to see it's not a big area to see the property from the town right of way. Is it a deal breaker if you can't get on those properties in terms of coming up with a good design?
It is absolutely not a deal breaker. We can get photographs and enough data without stepping onto people's properties that we can just make up for that later.
Mm-hmm.
So we can still get a preliminary design put together, targeting our May 4th meeting. And then for those areas where we have data gaps, we just go back and pick it up as required later on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with Route 156 and DOT, without investing a lot of time in a design that's going to get thrown out by DOT, I could see DOT, if given the choice, saying something to the effect of, we don't want any kind of changes to the shoulder, just work around what's there. Is there, and if that's the case, that sidewalk's going to kind of be wavering all over the place because of the way the shoulders, in some places really narrow and others.
Yes.
There is an ideal place to lay that sidewalk that would make sense in terms of giving it a little buffer to people's properties, and a buffer to the street. Is there a way of kind of sketching out where we would ideally like to see that sidewalk go, and see if DOT might say, oh yeah, you can do that here or there, I could just see them being very conservative if the ball is just entirely in their court. And obviously they have a lot of considerations that maybe we haven't considered, but without getting in a real design phase, is there a way of kind of sketching out an ideal location for the sidewalk as a place to begin a discussion with them?
Yeah, there is. We can run an alignment. It's actually pretty straightforward. It's a 5 foot sidewalk, kind of a DOT standard, if you will. And to your point, assuming that they're not going to want to relocate the curb lines and whatnot, and don't forget, in some ways, we hope that they don't want to relocate their curb lines because you'll pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't pay for that. They would say that's
Right.
part of your project.
Right.
That gets very expensive very quickly.
Mhm.
So if we made the assumption that the curb line would stay where it is, we can then do an offset. And what we would probably do is pick like a 4 foot grass buffer, which is kind of a standard sort of configuration, and then just run the alignment.
Mhm.
And then when we meet with them, say, hey, what do you think? Now,
Right.
that would also give us the opportunity to see, like you said, where are we impacting some of those private properties and some of the other things, the signs and
Right.
some of the stuff like that. So that can be done. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was a good question, Jim. This is Mary Jo. Thank you. Appreciate that. How does the committee propose to help Kurt get to these property owners quickly?
And by the way, my list will have, I've already started, like I said, I'll have that out today. It's got the name, the address. The one thing I don't have is phone numbers.
I think in
Well, Kurt, I'm sorry.
the
This
Frank
is-
indicated that he has phone numbers. This was Mary Jo, sorry.
We may have some phone numbers depending on where the properties are. Once again, this is Frank. I think that if we decide to make a phone call, and it sounds like there's only a couple of properties that we're talking about. Am I correct, Kurt?
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but it's probably going to be 4 properties. Yeah, it's not like
Okay.
it's 15.
So I think that we can, make some if there's only 4 properties, we might be able to track down the phone numbers of those individuals. I think it's got to be very clear as to what you want to do when you get on the property. So just a quick descriptor of what you want to do on the property, and then we make the phone calls and just see what they say. There's a couple of people that the butchers, we know their phone number. And there are probably a couple others that we can track down if we needed to.
Great. And the work would be measurements and photographs.
This is Mary Jo. If we have email, then we email them this form you would sign, correct, Kurt?
No, at this stage, we don't need the form yet because we're only going to go on the property just to take the measurements and the photos. The form will come later on once we actually have the design work on their property
Okay,
completed.
okay. So you're suggesting, since we don't have to have any construction done and we don't have to have any one-on-one discussion with the owner, that a verbal approval will suffice.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll literally be on their property for 30 minutes. Won't even need to touch anything. We'll literally just be out there with our tape measure, taking photographs and notes, and then that's it.
What does the
So,
kid
I'm
feel
sorry.
about- I'm sorry, Frank, I was just going to say, what do you think about that?
Well, I think the verbal approval is fine. This is Frank. The question that I'm sure will be asked of whoever makes the phone call is, okay, when am I going to talk to the engineers to figure out what they want to do? And I agree with you with your statement earlier, Kurt, when you had mentioned that you'd like to go to them with a plan, with an idea, rather than asking them what their idea is. I think it's a great idea to do that. But as we ask these people to enter their property to make measurements and photographs and all, I'm sure the next question is going to be, when am I going to talk to somebody about what they want to do?
Well, and this is Mary Jo. We know it's going to be after our May 4th meeting. The committee gets look at the preliminary design and discuss BC's recommendations, especially for those properties. So I think we can say it would be towards the end of May anyway.
I totally agree with you, Mary Jo. Yeah, toward the end of May, as we're midway through final design.
Do you think that'll suffice, Kurt? It's Mary Jo, or I mean Frank.
Yeah, I think as long as we give them good information. I think lack of information is going to be where the concern it raises. That if we give them good, solid information, say we need to take some pictures, get some measurements, and you know what? By mid-May, you're going to have a conversation directly with the engineering group that's proposing what to do here, and they can discuss that one-on-one with you.
Yeah, I think as I heard, Kurt, it's going to be towards the end of May, not the middle of. It may be our.
Yeah, I would say
Pardon?
end of May, and that puts us essentially in the middle of the final design process.
Okay.
I think that's appropriate, and I don't think there's a problem with that.
Great.
Right.
Good. Okay, so as far as any liability concerns for the town, are we all in a consensus anyway that approval is okay for ESC to be on Hartford Avenue properties without anything in writing? Guess I need to hear from the en masse on that.
Well, this is Eric. I guess what we could do is if we each say it's 4 properties, we each make one phone call. We could have them email whomever, the selectman's office, say they give permission, and then we have it in writing as well.
Or we could email them with a confirmation.
Right. Either way, that would be relatively quick and easy to do. So then we have it in writing and we have it verbally, then there shouldn't be no liability issue for the town.
Or BSC.
Right, correct.
We like you guys. We want you to live. Okay. This is Mary Jo. I like that idea personally, Eric, to have and Frank to have an email confirmation.
So I guess what we could just do is ask for their email address when we make that call. Say,
Right.
What's your contact, and then we can send them an email with explaining what they're going to be doing. Basically, what just Frank was saying about the end of May and what Kurt said,
Mhm.
and then we send the email, they confirm it, and then we have it in writing, and there shouldn't be any issue then.
Sounds good to me. What do you think, Jim?
That sounds like a good way to go.
Okay. I appreciate it all. Okay. So as far as that goes, just to finish this out, it's primarily measurements and it's primarily photographs of about 4 properties that we know have some issues with their yards or property regarding the, I guess, abutting the new sidewalk. Is there anything, Kurt, that we have to discuss regarding drainage on the street? I have a feeling that will come up with the butchers as it did on our walkthrough.
Yeah, and we've actually been starting to kick around ideas for that. That's another key part of the assessment, is to start looking at what are those topographical differences and how do we make sure that putting the sidewalk in there doesn't make the situation worse. And we will present to the committee some of our findings and then some of the options. As an example, sometimes it's well worth spending a little bit of money to put in things on people's properties that are what I'll call goodwill gestures. So as an example, there may be a situation where we put in a small area drain and then tie it into the drainage system or something like that. So we'll give a range of options for those things. They did seem very concerned about that when we did that initial walk, and I know that the town had put in the apron with the lip on it. And they said, when it rains, rainwater comes from the street and comes into the property. That's to be expected. That lip is at least 1.5 inches. So yeah, under significant rainstorms, I'm not surprised that water flows onto their property, but that's one of those situations where the town didn't make that worse. It's the fact that you've got a road and your property is at a lower elevation, and when there's sufficient rainfall that it goes over the top of that lip, gravity is going to dictate that yes, it is going to make its way, into your yard. So we're definitely very sensitive to that, and we'll work very closely with the committee as we come up with designs to make sure that we're striking that balance. We don't want to put the town in a position where now we're fixing someone's issue that wasn't caused or exacerbated by the town. That's not fair to the town and to the budget for the project. We want to be sensitive that it's a public project and it is for the benefit of the town. So we want to strike that balance and be reasonable about what we do.
This is Frank again. Question, Kurt. When you did your topographical survey and the other work out there, were there any surprises? Was there anything that you didn't expect to find that you found?
No surprises. Yeah, pretty much what we expected.
So this is Mary Jo. Kurt, you're interested in coming out to the properties next week. Is that weather dependent or is it like a definite? Do you have a dates in mind?
As long as it's not pouring rain, because we're going to have our plan sheets and those kinds of things. And then, like Jim said, even if we didn't hear back, we'll still go out because we can still get enough data from the street and then always make return visits later once we hear back from people. So the only thing that would keep us from heading out there is if it's raining pretty good. That gets tough trying to take notes and photographs, and I'll email you Monday, the day before, with a confirmation. We had talked about meeting out there at 10 a.m. So yeah, currently that's the plan. I haven't looked at the weather that far out, but let's hope for a sunny day.
So Frank again here. Question, Kurt, or the committee. So what if the homeowner says, well, I want to be there when they're there?
I think there's no way we could tell them they can't be there. And that does happen sometimes, and we're okay with that. We would want to maintain social distancing, and we would be very, very careful about answering questions. And essentially our response would be, we haven't started designing yet. We are just collecting data at this point. There will be a process through which you can talk to the committee and us, but at this point we are at the data collection stage. That's it. We'd be completely non-committal, particularly with those people that said, are you going to fix my problem? We would say, yeah, we are just gathering data at this stage, and we will be circling back and we will work with you. We want to be very, very careful about what we say. So I'm of the opinion, the less we say, the better.
Yeah, I agree. So in the event that, let's say we make these calls this week, for instance, so you can be out there next week, you'll know a day in advance of when you're going to be there. So, for instance, the property owner says, well, I'd like to know what day they're going to be there. We can at least tell them what day you're going to be there a day, 24 hours in advance, and say, they're going to be there sometime on next Thursday, period, and let it at that.
that definitely works for us.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding our homework? If we can get that information from Kurt, today is the 7th. If we can get the information, Frank, do you want to see the information and provide back, because based on your access to phone number, suggestion of who calls who?
Yeah, if we find out who it is, I'll take a look at the Soundview Beach Association database and talk to people like Dennis and some of the people that've been there forever, and try to get some phone numbers. Then we can decide who calls who.
Okay.
I could just send out an email and say, these are the people and these are the phone numbers, and
Okay.
who wants to do it. So
I think because you've had so many conversations with the butchers that I'm suggesting that you definitely.
Thanks
a bunch. I can see you laughing at that.
Second that, Mary Jo. Yeah, I'll second that.
I just think, it will keep them calmer if having a continued same information, same person.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Well, let's see who the people are. I may know some of these people firsthand, and it would be easier if they hear from somebody they know.
Yeah, that's my point.
Let's see who they are, Kurt. And once we get the list, and I'll take a look at it. Obviously, I'm in my office. I don't go very many places these days, so but I'm crazy busy here, just trying to keep things afloat in these very trying times. So, but once I see what you got, Kurt, we'll take it from there, and I'll make sure we all discuss it.
All right, sounds good. And I will have that list out today.
Thank you. I didn't realize when I received the draft schedule from, I did this, Joe. I didn't realize it didn't go out to everybody. So I did during our meeting email you guys a copy of it so you can look at it. Thank you very much for that, Kurt. Appreciate it.
Yes, and I my apologies for sending it to everyone.
That was fine. I just I wasn't quite awake this morning. So thank you.
Mary Jo and committee, this is Jim. I've kind of timed out, so I have to leave the meeting, unfortunately, and get into work. So.
Thank you, Jim. I think the only other thing remaining is next meeting. Date. You already told me May 4th is good for you.
Yes.
Does the committee quickly feel like we should conference call after after Kurt's team does their thing, like towards the end of April?
That would be fine.
I think that'd be great. At least we can get set up for May 4th, or decide whether May 4th is appropriate. And we'll also have to discuss whether May 4th is going to be an in-person meeting or another video conference.
Right. So how does the 21st of April, it's Tuesday, same time, work for you?
That's fine for me. This is Jim.
I'm checking.
Okay, thanks, Frank.
That's fine for Eric.
Thank you, Eric.
That's good for me.
Thank you. Kurt, is it okay for you? Kurt? Well, I think we lost Kurt, but I'm going to assume that it works for him since today did too. And we'll schedule another call on the 21st, 10 a.m. And then thank you. And then we'll seriously discuss our preliminary design meeting and how that's going to work. Okay. If there aren't any other questions, or are there any other questions?
Yes, Mary Jo, we're having these conference calls, and the question is public comment or anybody who wants to join these meetings. Michelle, you're still on the line. I can see your picture there. So how are we handling it? Is the meeting notice going out to everybody's just on a public basis, and then they could call into these conference to this type of teleconference as they wish?
So when we put the meetings on the website, it includes a video piece, and it includes the call-in information if someone wants to just call in. And then on the agendas, it has to also include that information. But you don't have to, it's not an FY requirement to have public comment unless you want to have it. So that would be up to you.
But the meetings are public, and they have to be posted, and public can attend if they desire.
Yep.
Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep, that's not changed, Frank. This is Mary Jo, and the minutes still have to be done. And then the recording of, for the new executive order, the recording of this message also is going up. Recording of this meeting also goes up on the website. So there's lots of opportunity for the public to join us and to give us feedback.
Yep.
Does that answer your question, Frank?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, no, that's fine.
Okay, Frank, I'm not hearing back from you on these meetings. Are you getting the information?
Some of my Outlook calendar requests that are coming through, Michelle, I just as soon I have just an email, because the Outlook calendar requests really screw my calendar up. So just a straight email with the login information be appropriate for me.
But Frank, are you getting your email request from me?
I am getting some. The last 2 weeks, Mary Jo, be honest with you, have been a blur.
Well, I'll keep nudging you.
I can barely keep up with. I'm getting 200 or 300 emails a day. I can barely keep up with everything. I'm sorry.
That's fine. I just wasn't sure we were going to have a quorum. So I'll keep nudging you then. Okay. Any other questions?
Just the problem is with those Outlook calendar requests. If I hit attend, for instance, it wipes it off. It wipes it off on my email, and then I have no link information.
I mean, like when the WebEx itself is emailing you about it?
Yeah, if you send the email as part of a Evite for Outlook calendar, and I hit back on attend, or I will attend, or something like that, it wipes out that particular email, and I lose the link to the WebEx. That's why I said send the WebEx.
If you look at your Outlook calendar, it should have saved it in the actual event on the calendar.
I don't use Outlook calendar.
Okay.
So,
We'll
that's why it goes away, and I can't find it again.
We'll continue to put that on the agenda for you, Frank.
Yeah, that would be great. That'd be great.
Can if there aren't any more questions, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Frank was first, Jim second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much for your patience and flexibility. And thank you, Kurt, for keeping us moving.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, for your help today.
You're welcome. Hi, everybody.
Michelle, are you still there?
Yes,
I have a
still
quick
here.
question. You're looking for webcams for
Yes.
Tim? Have you found any yet? Because I can't find any.
No, we even asked our IT company to look into it, and I haven't heard back from them.
Well, if you can find any, get me one too. I'll pay the town for it. I can't. It's insane. It's really insane. No, I appreciate that. All right.
No problem, Frank.
Thanks a lot. Thank you now. Good night. Bye. Good night, everybody. Bye.